but it ain't what it used to be. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the city of Fort Myers. We're gonna be doing some drive arounds, showing you guys the streets of Fort Myers. And I'm Jose. I am your entertainment. Thank you so much for tuning in to one of my videos. We're gonna explore the city of Fort Myers. We're gonna hit the streets, we're gonna hit the air, we're gonna get a really good feel for Fort Myers. You guys ready? Let's do it! I want to show you guys that just because a place is poor doesn't mean that the people there are bad. It's so disappointing that in all my videos so many people assume just because a place is poor that the people are bad, when in reality these are the hardest working people. The lowest paying jobs are the hardest jobs. The people that sacrifice themselves the most for our society are the ones that live in the worst conditions. I recently asked a friend to join me to eat at a restaurant in this district of Fort Myers, and he told me, Jose, I can't go there. It's a dangerous place. And I told him, where do you live? He says, well, I live in a nice gated community. And I asked him, where do you think the people that mow your lawn live? And where do you think the people that clean your pool live? And what about the people that come and work on the utilities in your house, and the guy that installs your Comcast cable? Where do you think those people live? Do you think they live in gated communities too? So we kept talking, and I asked him, do you think I've ever been robbed when I go to all these neighborhoods? And I replied, no, I've never been robbed when I go to these neighborhoods. And he says, well, I've never been robbed in my private gated community as well. And I said, well, how much do you pay for living in a private gated community? He says, well, I pay $8,600 a year. And I told him that's a lot more than I've ever had stolen in my life living in the hoods. I've had a bicycle stolen. I've had a golf club stolen. That's about 100, and a fishing pole. It doesn't amount to more than $120 in my whole lifetime. But if you're going to live your whole entire lifetime behind a gated community, being $8,600 a year, that's a whole lot more than I'm ever going to have robbed from me living in a poor neighborhood. So I convinced him. And he came and he ate with me. Finally convinced my friend, and we sat down and we ate one of these restaurants. And our bill came out to $22 for me and him. Then he said, wow, this is better than the fine dining, or I don't know what the phrase he said was, and this is better food than some of the really high-end restaurants I go to. And I told him, well, how much do you pay for those high-end restaurants? He said this would have been $70 for both of us somewhere else. And I told him, well, how much money do you get robbed from you every time you go to a fancy restaurant? Nobody robbed us here. We paid $22 for two people. So he sat there and I saw the tip he put on the table. And I told him, how much do you tip when you go to a rich restaurant? He says, well, I'll usually leave 20%, so I'm going to leave 20% here. I told him, well, listen, it's not 20%. You're leaving 20% of $70, but you're leaving this woman 20% of $20. That's about a third less. And she took care of us just like they would have anywhere else. So, the point is, people, that sometimes we have a prejudice in society against certain places. And we just assume that a place is bad because it's poor. And we start to exclude this place from the economy. And the reason the place is poor isn't always because the people are not hard working. Because we know that the hardest working jobs, moving trucks, landscaping trucks, those trucks aren't parked in front of a private community. Those trucks are parked in the poorest neighborhoods. So we know there's people in these neighborhoods that work a whole lot harder than the rest of us. So I told him, at a fancy restaurant, you'd be leaving a $14 tip. What happens if you leave a $10 tip? He says, well, they don't like it if you leave a $10 tip. And I told him, leave this person here a $10 tip. And before we walked out the door, she saw the tip we gave her. She called us and said, hey, right before we walked the door, and she said, thank you so much. Looking back at her tip, thanking us for what somebody else would have despised. I was recently at a Burger King in Naples, Florida, where I live, and the gentleman behind the counter, he's covered in tattoos, he's African American, and he's got gold teeth. And he's taking my order, and somebody comes up behind him and says, "Do you think you can handle this?" And the gentleman just closed his eyes and looked down. And I know exactly I know exactly why he did that, because I know my temperament as well. And he just kept taking the order and ignored the guy. And when the guy walked away, I said, "Look, man, I really respect what you did there because I wouldn't have handled it the same way." And he looked back and he said, "Well, this is the only job I can really get with my situation." I don't know if he was referring to a criminal record. This is the only job he could get, or I don't know exactly what it meant, but this person is dealing with a situation that most of us would not have dealt with the same level of patience, with the same level of professionalism, with the same level of endurance. Yet he bears that situation because society, for some reason, has deemed him as unacceptable of a higher, of a more dignified occupation. So now, the only thought that I have is, he didn't make you look bad. He made himself look bad. Because he made you look like a star. Whoever that person is, that person made you look like a star. Because I really respect and admire how you handled that situation. Because I know I wouldn't have handled it the same way. I was at a gas station, 7:30 in the morning, in Bonita Springs, Florida, getting ready for work. There's a very long line, maybe about 15 men, all wearing yellow work boots. All of us with a bottle of Gatorade in our hand, waiting in line to pay for our Gatorade before a long day's work. Only one single woman is in this line, and she's staying right behind me. And a woman walks through the door, looks around, and says, "Oh, this is unacceptable. This is incredible," to the woman that was in line right behind me, who didn't reply to her. She was apparently upset at the very long line of workers getting their daily supply of Gatorade. What's up, everybody? We are on the streets of Fort Myers. What a neat little find. Alright guys, we knocked on the door, no answer, so we'll just have to come back some other day. Just chilling, enjoying Fort Myers, guys. A very interesting, do you know how old they are?
Yeah, that one there is about a 1950. C, Super C.
Okay.
You know what the difference between Super C and the regular?
Mm-hmm.
It's got a hydraulic unit on it. Right on the back.
Okay.
It's a hydraulic unit that raises this up and down. The regular C before then didn't have that. And that one there is a F20 International. This here's a International also, Farmall. That's a Farmall 20, F20.
It's a big one. Good size. I love the cast iron seat.
I put that on the ride around parades with it. Somebody ride on it. This is the first one I bought, really. They come out of North Florida up there. And,
I like North Florida. It's so beautiful.
yeah.
How do you feel? I mean, you're into tractors, and but you live in the city of Fort Myers, right in the center of the city of Fort Myers.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
I'm born and raised here.
Born and raised here, so this is home. This is home.
Yeah. I bought this place in '62.
Wow.
That rail car came from up there.
How do you get your hands on a rail car?
Huh?
I mean, how do you get your hands on a rail car? That's a little bit of a...
You find them here and there. I've got another one in the back that came from here. It was out there in Buckingham during the war.
Wow.
It was used on the railroad down east and west through here all the way over to Clueston. And spur went off into the Buckingham there because there's a gunner school. And And a guy lived outside the gate there when they closed it down. He got one that was working. Right there was what they call an inspector's car.
Okay.
And the one he got was a working car. It was flatbed, the bigger engine, and all belt, chain drive with a clutch on it. And that one there just a belt drive, but it just hauls 2 or 3 people on it, you know. The other one was pulling a cart just like that of wheels with a bed on it, haul the trucks and cross ties with reels and all. And work on the track. I got it back here.
This looks just like the engine from an old car, huh?
Yeah.
You ever seen an old 4-car engine? Just like an old car. One thing is the exhaust on this thing runs up instead of down. I think it's so
It
cool.
had spikes on it. I've taken it off because you can't drive around with spikes on it on the road.
I got one cool thing, like I love the house. Unbelievable. And it's so, I mean, you think about this, it's a house from like the 20s. It's so charming. So neat.
That one over yonder is the F20 also. It's probably about a 39. That one there's a 38. That there's about a year later than that one is. I bought it here. Old man had it sit there for years. And that one there is a German tractor.
Oh, these are German.
Yeah.
Is that the brand right there? Holder?
Yeah.
Wow. This is from the 40s?
Yeah, they run 40s and 50s. They're real hot in the 50s and the 60s.
Wow.
These two came from around here. There's a farmer here that had 5 or 6 of them to see.
Hmm.
And there's only 2 of them that he had. But that one is an older tractor than this one. Because of the way it's made, a few things different on it.
It's interesting, in that era they would have brought something from Germany. You'd think they wouldn't want anything from Germany in those years.
Well, there was all probably 5 or 6, 7 dealers around the country, one in Canada,
Yeah.
sold them.
That's
They're
crazy.
used for small crop and nursery stuff, you know, what they use them
I love how that one's got 2 different independent tracks on the back, on each side, on the wheels.
for. Well, somebody added a wheel onto it. They put a spacer in there, put that on it. It didn't come with it.
Oh, I see, okay.
But it is an older tractor than this one. This year, got it just like it is. The stuff is missing off the back.
I do junk removal for a living, and I got a tractor. It was from the 70s, but it was just pristine. And a guy out of North Fort Myers bought it. Seems like every time I'm down in Naples, and all the old tractors that I get, guys from North Fort Myers come get them.
And the one on the other end down there, it's an English tractor.
Oh, nice.
It's a diesel. These 2 here are diesel also. This is diesel 2-cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And that's diesel. Regular diesel.
Wow. Just I love how the gas tank is just out there. So you know, if these tractors were 200 miles south of here in Cuba, they'd be working. You know that, right?
Oh yeah.
They keep them working over
I
there.
never run that one. I got it just like it is. But the other one I bought it down in Georgia. I brought it back, got it to run. I used to drive it around all the time. Down there, I used to drive it. And I haven't run it in a long time. Run them 2.
I love the fireplace, man. This house has so much character. That is so much. So this one's English.
Yeah.
Wow. Very stylish. It's got like the whole front is just nice and round. It's got so much character.
Just all this old stuff.
I haven't got any shows. Most of the shows that I go to are like livestock shows, pigeon shows.
Well, they had the one that just ended.
Where do they hold them?
It's going this weekend. Tomorrow's the last day. The one up there is Awful Springs.
Okay.
But it ain't what it used to be. There's a lot of people falling out, and we used to have one at Christian down there, where they've changed his rules and regulations down there. The Christian Park, it's a state-owned deal. What it was a Christian sect of people back there in the 1800s.
Mr. Lester, I really appreciate your time, man. You have a beautiful day. Thank you for showing me the tractors. It's gonna go on YouTube. And maybe she felt above a bunch of men wearing boots. She walked right out of the door with a disgusted look on her face. And I looked at the young lady that was behind me and I said, what is disgusting about a bunch of men who are up at 7:30 getting prepared for a long day's work? And she looked at me and smiled and she says, the only thing disgusting around here was her. And I thought to myself, a bunch of men dressed in work clothes may not be the prettiest sight to behold, but for this city of Naples and Bonita and Fort Myers and all of their wealthy districts to look as beautiful as they look, from their landscaping to their painted houses to their brick pavers, which are hard to install, to the working crews and the prisoners that pick up the garbage from the side of the road. If it wasn't for this ugly group of men, we wouldn't have a beautiful city, would we? So now you're afraid of going into the neighborhood of the people who go inside of your house and wash your dishes and do your laundry and dust underneath your carpet and help you move something really heavy inside your house, or help you kill some cockroaches and termites from your house. You're afraid to come where we live, but you're not afraid of letting us go inside of your home. So you're afraid of walking the streets in the neighborhood where the people that work for you live, but you're not afraid of letting them walk around your neighborhood carrying a leaf blower on their back, or in your yard on their knees pulling weeds. Why are we afraid to walk in a place surrounded by people who we let inside of our homes? Why do we say these neighborhoods are disgusting when the salary that we pay these people is the reason why they have to live in a place that's disgusting? If you're not willing to walk into a restaurant that needs business, if you're not willing to pay somebody an extra tip who deserves it and who needs it more than you do, how do we expect them to improve their living conditions? Well, why don't they pick up the garbage on the side of the road? Well, I'll tell you why. Because it's not their road. It's not their house. Go into a poor neighborhood and look at the people who are homeowners. And then look at the people who are renting. Whose fault is it really that these properties are in neglect? Is it the people who rent them? Or is it the landlords who come to collect the rent but don't care about what the neighborhood looks like? So I had a friend many years ago who I used to work with, and he was telling me he was going to go back to Guatemala. And I said, why are you going to go back to Guatemala? I didn't want him to leave because he was the best worker we had. So one day we were at the bank together, and he walked up and gave me a slip, and he had not in a trust fund, not in an IRA, no trust fund, no, none of that. And Bank of America He had 427,000 US dollars. He drove a bicycle and lived in an apartment with 6 other people so that they could divide the rent into an affordable number. And he told me, I have a farm in Guatemala. I have cattle, I have sheep, I have land, I have coconut groves, I have mangoes, I have half a mountain, I got fields, I have houses, I have children, I have wives. I didn't come here to live here. I came here to work so that I can leave something for my family. See, back in Guatemala, they give us $5 a day. But here I make $120 a day. You know what I do with that money? I send it back to Guatemala. And my family in Guatemala takes it out little by little. Because if you go to the bank and you withdraw too much money, the bank teller, that's a few guys that are a few blocks down the road, know you just withdrew a lot of money. If it's a little bit of money, they're not going to mess with you. So every single day, you go to the bank, his family withdraw little by little the money to build their houses, to buy their animals, so they can have everything they need. A smart, hardworking person in a poor neighborhood can become wealthy. If he's smart, saves his money. With a little bicycle, this little Guatemala friend of mine had $427,000 raw in the bank. I think he should have invested it or something, but he had it. He worked for it. He worked for it doing landscaping work. And he saved it by not paying a $700 car note with a $300 insurance and oil changes. His bicycle didn't need an oil change, did it? The average car payment, insurance, and maintenance on a vehicle in the United States today will run you close to $1,000 a month. That is about $12,000 a year. That's $120,000 in 10 years, which is $600,000 in a lifetime. And if you put some interest on that, for putting it somewhere that pays you back interest instead of just leaving it in your bank account, it means you can become a millionaire simply by not driving a car in the United States of America. My little friend from Guatemala had 6 roommates. He was paying $200 for rent and housing every month. We want to live in a house in Lehigh with a pool in the back, so we can dip in a pool after a long day of work. You know who's dipping in a pool? The landlord who owns that house you're renting. That's the guy who needs to be dipping in a pool of your sweat and your slavery that you're giving to that person. If you're poor, you don't need a car, you need a bicycle. If you're poor, you don't need a whole house to yourself. Especially if you're single, you need some roommates. It's hard enough that the rich people don't want to come and spend money at the gas station in your neighborhood, or at the restaurant in your neighborhood, or at the stores in your neighborhood. They don't even want to drive through or walk through your neighborhood where they can drop a quarter on the sidewalk because they don't even want to walk through your neighborhood. So it's hard enough that all that is against you, and on top of the fact that all the odds are stacked against you as a poor person, then you have to spend all your money putting it back into the pockets of the rich people who own the dealerships. I support small business, but when I see a used car salesperson go out of business, when I see a buy here, pay here go out of business, it makes me very happy that those crooks are out of the neighborhood taking away the poor people's money.